Okay, in this video, we're going to go over how you can collect your data for experiment number 15, the enthalpy of chemical reactions. And so on your page, where you should be in the module, you should have already watched the pre-lab video, which would be posted here once I get that uploaded. We should have done our attendance survey already. And so this is this video that will be here, the lab data and simulation demonstration. That's this video, all right? So when you get started with that, there's two things that you're going to need. One is you're going to need this simulation, which is through this link. And so we're going to go ahead and open that up in a new tab. The other one is we're eventually going to have to read through this. This is going to list the online changes. And so that's going to list how we're going to modify our lab and our data collection from what's inside your lab manual to what we're going to see here. Right? And so you can see that PDF right down here. Right? And so it kind of walks you through what needs to change for them for each of those. Now, this simulation does need to be done on a computer. I don't believe it is mobile accessible. And so if that's a challenge, then let me know. And that way we can sort that out. Right? But when you open this up, this simulation is for calorimetry. Right? And that's what we're studying. We're trying to study that transfer of heat back and forth between them. And so you want to click at this experiment tab. Now, the very first time you do this, you can try to do a demonstration for your experiment. Right? It walks you through and explains how you do all of the buttons, right? And when you're ready to do the lab, you're going to do this experiment, this run experiment. Right? So I'm going to go through the run experiment so that way I can show you what we're going to try to accomplish. And so when we hit run experiment, we've kind of set up with two different situations. The one here on the left is going to be solution 1 or container 1. The one on the right is going to be container number 2. And so the idea is we're going to prepare these two containers independently of one another, and then we're going to pour whatever's in number 1 into number 2. It's going to mix it here with that. We're going to get the temperature at the end. And so we're going to try several different experiments where we're mixing different things, and we're going to monitor that temperature change. So the first one is we're always going to set up our left-hand side first. And so one of those examples of what we might be doing is we could be starting with a solid. And so let's say that it's our solid, and in this case, we're going to use something like sodium hydroxide, NaOH. So we select the solid tab, we can select what option we have from it. And then from there, this first tab is going to give us our mass. Right? So I can put all the way up to 25 grams, I can go down to 0.5 grams. You can't really click on these, so you can only move them in 0.5 gram increments. Right? And so the one that I'm going to do is we're going to look at this 6 grams of our sodium hydroxide. Our starting temperature is always going to be at 20 degrees Celsius, so we can leave that as it is. And once we've set up container number 1, you can see our temperature there, you can see our material. We're going to hit next. This is going to let us now set up container number 2. So we could choose to mix that with a liquid. We could choose to mix that with another solid. We could choose to even mix that with a solution. And so most of what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be mixing our bases with our acids. So we might use something like nitric acid. And we can choose the volume that's going to be in that container. So we can go all the way up to 100 milliliters. Our lowest is going to be 50. They go up in 1 milliliter increments. And so we're going to start off with 50 milliliters. Now we can choose our molarity down here. So in this case, I might go all the way from 3 molarity to 0.1. So maybe we'll just do our 3 molarity. And you can see that this one here, its initial temperature is also at 20 degrees. So now what's going to happen is we're going to pour our sodium hydroxide from container 1 into container 2 when we're ready to start. Right? So we hit next over here. Now I'm going to want to select my graph view. This is going to show my temperature of this probe over time, so I can start to see how our system behaves. When everything's ready, we've got our conditions set as we like it. We're going to hit start. If for some reason there's a mistake here, then you can hit reset and you can start over for your experiment. But we're going to go ahead and mix them. So we're putting our sodium hydroxide in with our nitric acid. We're mixing that in there. You can see what temperature change we're starting to see. Now that temperature that's reporting up in this corner, that really is the final temperature of our solution. And so you want to make sure that you remember that it started at 20 degrees Celsius, and this one ended all the way up at 84.66 degrees Celsius. So that's a positive change in this solution of 84.66 minus its initial 20 degrees to give us a 64.66 temperature change. When I'm ready to do another experiment, I can reset it. In this case, let's say that we wanted to mix two solutions. We can select solution for our first one. Maybe this time we want a solution of our sodium hydroxide. We can choose our volume. Maybe we want 100 milliliters of it. We can choose our concentration. We can choose our same, we can mix it with another solution over here. Right? So it could be, this time we'll still do nitric acid. Maybe this time instead of 100 mils, we only want to do 50. That's okay. And maybe for our molarity, instead of being at 3, maybe we want to do it at 1. So this time we're mixing two solutions. They're both still starting at 20 degrees Celsius. We're still going to see our graph view. And then we can hit start when we're ready to mix them. So we can mix those two things together. So they can mix and mix and mix, mix and mix and mix. And we can see what our temperature change is going to be here. So this one's not quite as large of a temperature change as last time, right? Last time we were all the way up in the 80s. This time we're going to be much lower than that. So this time we only went up about 5 degrees Celsius, right? 4.54 degrees Celsius for our temperature change. So you're going to want to go through from our experiment. There's 3 different ones we're going to do for each of those individual parts. So we'll reset it. We'll do one of those. And so you can read through in this document. It tells you what you need to set up. So on the first part, we'll mix 4 grams of KOH with 100 milliliters of 0.70 molarity HCl. You can also look down here at this chart, and it tells you your conditions. Now, the important part to remember is that you really do want to make sure you keep whatever's on the left-hand side with container 1, everything on the right side with container 2. It changes your values that you get as it reports them out if you were to switch these places. So if it's saying put the solid into the solution, make sure that that's how you set it up for your experiment. If you do the solution into the solid, the data that they give you is very different, right? And I don't want to confuse you guys, so let's just always put whatever's on the left-hand side here, container 1, over on the left-hand side of our experiment. So in this case, we're starting off with our KOH. We're starting off with 4 grams of it. Right? 20 degrees Celsius there. You can hit next. We're mixing it with a solution of our HCl. That solution had a volume of 100 milliliters, right? 0.7 for its molarity. We can get all of that set up. We can hit next. We can set up our graph view. And so everything's ready for us to collect that data. All we have to do now is hit start. It mixes them in. It's going to start to move up. And that's what you're doing for this experiment. So once you collect all of that data, you have to try it yourself in order to figure out what your final temperatures are. You can see in here, we walk through each of those parts, how you guys can collect the data, what they should be, where you should put your final temperature, right? And then you can also put how we do those calculations for each of them. Some of them will be simple. You can ignore like the heat gain by the KOH because we're adding in as a solid in some of those cases, and we don't need to worry about the temperature change of a solid, right? And so you have that in there for each of them. Okay? Work your way through. It'll tell you what you guys need to do, so you can do your summary of your results like usual. The only difference is we're going to be looking for KOH instead of your sulfuric acid. Okay? You can do question number 1, but instead of using part 1C in the instructions, use part 1D. But you don't have to worry about doing number 2. You also don't have to worry about doing the consider this. Okay? So go ahead and try out your calorimetry. Try out doing your experiments. If you run into any problems, let me know and we can take care of that. Once all of that is done, I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. You can turn in your lab just as you normally would, right? Take pictures of it, scan it in, turn it in through Gradescope. You have until 3/26 to get all through those. All right, good luck.